United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we'll have the roll.
Alderperson Braithwaite.
Here.
Alderperson Harrison.
Here.
Alderperson Hoagst.
Present.
Alderperson Lytle. All right. Alderperson Swanson.
Here.
Alderperson Tucker Long.
Here.
Alderperson Weiss.
Here.
And I believe Alderperson Helmke is going to join us a little bit later.
That is correct. We got 6 people in the room, so we have quorum and we can proceed. With that, we'll proceed to item 4, which is public comment. If any members of the public wish to speak, now that would be the time to do so.
You go first.
Is the microphone on?
It should be green, like a green light.
Yep.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Cohen. I'm a resident of the city of Verona. Tonight, for the 5th year in a row, Mayor Diaz will be signing the Wear Orange Proclamation, which declares the first Friday in June as National Gun Violence Awareness Week. And I am grateful for the continued support over the last 5 years. And I know sometimes this proclamation doesn't make, the news, but I think it's a meaningful step in the right direction, and it tells me a lot about the values of leadership in our city. As a next step, I'm asking the Common Council to consider posting Be Smart secure firearm storage information on the city's website. Be Smart is an educational program, and it puts the onus on adults to secure firearms and keep them out of the reach of kids and people in crisis. And it doesn't debate the Second Amendment. It's about responsible gun ownership. We should talk about it the same way we talk about bike safety. So the Verona School District has already shared this information. I've asked, I think this might be the 3rd year I've asked the city to post it. But I would love to see the city and the police department and the school send one message about secure firearm storage and share it with all of our community to keep us safer. Thank you.
Thank you. We are still in public comment, so whoever wants to go next can do so.
So, hi, my name is Joby Chesnick. I live at 710 Edward Street in Verona, right here in Westridge. And I'm here to provide some feedback and to ask your help in informing our street, the residents on our street, about upcoming events for street replacement and apparently a sidewalk installation also. So I have to tell you, this is my first time here talking and at a city council, so this is kind of new to me, but I felt very compelled to come. I have spoken with about 5 of the homes on that street that are directly around me, and a couple of those people have also talked to other residents on that street. And so the comments that I want to give you are kind of a summary of that. A couple other people wanted to come. Unfortunately, they had plans traveling and therefore were not able to come. One person, I hope you all will allow me to read, they sent me with a letter with their comments. So let me say that it was news to all of us on Edward Street that a new street and sidewalks are to be installed. And I would like to ask that better communication be thought of and how to contact residents ahead of time so that we can provide feedback, because we felt that there are a lot of considerations that would be important for you to know about, and we hope that we would be able to interact with you. So I think just to kind of summarize everything, I think we all, number one, were unsure why Edward Street was selected. It's a short street. We were in a very established neighborhood with very established landscapes and have functioned, I'd say, without incident, without any pedestrian accidents, or I believe not even car accidents for the last 30 to 35 years. Our neighborhood is in need of new streets. I think it's been probably since 1991 or so since those streets were put in. So they have a lot of wear, there's a lot of cracks, and I think we would all love to see new streets, actually through the entire neighborhood. The part that we are actually hesitant about are the sidewalks. And there are a number of reasons why we are not really keen on installing sidewalks. Some of that corresponds to drainage in the area. Next to my house, in the exact same place across the street, we have two major routes of where the watershed comes down. All of the water for the entire neighborhood funnels through these two areas, and they're to go into two places that will be replaced with sidewalks. And I know that, or so I've heard, that engineers don't like to put pipes and that underneath sidewalks because they get clogged and other things. But we're concerned because at times the water is quite considerable. And if that were drainage were blocked, I would probably have water in my basement, which I've never had in the 25 years that I've lived there. And we would probably have pools and, you know, a new Lake Joby in my backyard and maybe other people's yard too. So drainage is one consideration. Another consideration is that the yards are not level with the street, but when that neighborhood was designed, the yards are actually built up so that in a lot of cases, you're going to have to put in retaining walls and severely correct slopes in the driveway. And this is a hazard for some of us. I'm a senior citizen. Many of the people are senior citizens. And I've already fallen on my driveway with the slope that it has and has gotten a concussion for 6 months where I had memory problems. So I'm not, again, keen to have my driveway resloped to put in a sidewalk. There is a lot of vegetation and landscaping that has been put in over the years. Like I said, these are homes that are 30-plus years old. Almost every home in that stretch that is to be replaced will lose large trees and new landscaping that has been put in. Some of those trees are over 30 years old. It will change significantly that entrance to Westridge Estates. We feel that right now the streets are extra wide. They have wide bike lanes that have served well for both bikes and walking paths. And in fact, in the winter, people walk in the streets because the streets are always plowed and they're always salted and they're safer to walk in. So I think that's kind of a summary of where we are. I'm not sure of this whole process. I think there are some people who I encouraged to come. They felt that this was a done deal, that we would have no input, and they are unfortunately not here today. I'm hoping that you will listen, that you will allow us to become an active participant in how this process is to go forward, and you'll take our feedback. Can I read this letter from my neighbor for an extra minute?
Yeah, I think a
that all
minute's
right?
fine.
Dear City Council, and this is two people, Brian, and I wish I could remember his last name, I'm sorry, lives directly across the street from me, but I think his letter will say all. We are writing this letter in response to the city's proposed plan to add sidewalks along Edward Street as part of the street rehabilitation. Our home was built in 1993, where we have resided ever since. In 1993, we literally lived 2 houses from the edge of the city. The city saw no need for sidewalks in our neighborhood then, and we still see no need. The addition of lines on our street provides an adequate multi-use path for both bikes and pedestrians for our neighborhood and those passing through. The interconnectivity to the rest of the city for pedestrians is primarily limited to students walking to school, less than 10, Less than 5 EPIC employees who walk to work. They usually take Jenna rather than Edward, because that's where the entrance is, and other walkers or joggers. As a morning walker, I can tell you the multi-use paths on Verona streets are far safer to walk on in the winter months. By the time residents go to school or work, the streets are plowed and salted. The sidewalks are not. Some winters, portions of the sidewalks remain snow or ice covered for months. The addition of sidewalks, in our opinion, won't change the habits of Verona residents walking the street. We also question the ecological and economic value of adding the sidewalks. Less infrastructure produces a more ecological footprint and long-term less upkeep. Simpler is better. Along our street, according to the plan, several large trees, 32 years or older, will either need to be cut down or be at risk of dying due to damage to the root systems. Existing landscaping will need to be removed. Grass will be replaced with cement. Retaining walls on our property and next-door neighbors will need to be built. Drainage from adjoining properties crossing the sidewalks and driveways needs to be addressed. Our property is on the ridge leading to the neighborhood name of Westridge, so lots of water drains from the hill behind our house. Our topsoil in our yard is only about 6 inches deep with limestone underneath it. Melt from snow piles freeze on colder surfaces like sidewalks, creating falling hazards. Keeping sidewalks safe in winter requires the use of salt, which is detrimental to our local watershed. Could the city's money be better spent elsewhere than adding 2 sidewalks, which will provide little value to all Verona residents and limited use by neighborhood residents? An alternative would be to add a sidewalk to one side of the street for pedestrian safety purposes. So on this stretch of Edward Street, the north side would be better since it is flat. Well, my yard is not flat and I'm on the north side, and would link to the sidewalk on the north of the street by Thompson Park. There is also one sidewalk on one block of North Nine Mound Road by Harriet Park and on Cross Country Road from Tamarack Way to Hemlock Drive. Respectfully, Brian and Nancy Severinsen, that's their last name. So anyways, I think that's probably it in a nutshell. I think just as a final comment, we were told that the easement is 15 feet, and we do note that there are other sidewalks around Verona that are not all the way up to 15 feet. Having a sidewalk, if one were put in, that was less than 15 feet into the yards would certainly help with the slopes that we have and the retaining walls. We also note that it seems there have been exceptions to the sidewalk rule through Verona. So again, we would encourage you, please involve us for feedback, and we'd love to work with you.
Thank you. We are still in public comment, so if any other members of the public wish to speak, now would be the time to do so. Not seeing anyone else approaching the microphone. Therefore, we will move on to item 5, which is approve the minutes from the May 12, 2025 council meeting. Questions, comments, corrections, or motions to approve?
I'll move that we approve.
Motion by Alder Harrison. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Swanson. Last chance for corrections. Seeing no hands. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the May 12, 2025 council meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And the minutes are approved. With that, we'll move on to item 6, which is mayor's business. First up, we have 6A, which is appointments to the Sustainability Task Force. There are 2 names in your packet. And just, in the interest of 100% transparency, name number 2, Audrey Helmke, is Alder Helmke's daughter, if you were wondering. But with that, I would entertain a motion to confirm the appointments as listed in the packet. Alder Tucker Long.
I move to approve the appointments as listed in the packet.
Motion by Alder Tucker Long. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Harrison. All those in favor of approving the appointments to the Sustainability Task Force as listed in the packet, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. With that, we'll move on to 6B, which is a proclamation declaring the first Friday in June to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day, which I will read to you right now. once I find it in the packet. This proclamation declares the first Friday in June to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day in the city of Verona, Wisconsin, to honor and remember all victims and survivors of gun violence, and to declare that we as a country must do more to end this public health crisis. Whereas every day, 125 people in the United States are killed by gun violence, and more than 260 are shot and wounded, with an average of more than 19,000 gun homicides every year. And whereas people in the United States are 26 times more likely to die by gun homicide than people in other high-income countries, and whereas Wisconsin has an average of 741 gun deaths every year, with a rate of 12.5 deaths per 100,000 people, a crisis that costs the state $8.4 billion each year, of which $144.3 million is paid by taxpayers. Wisconsin has the 37th highest rate of gun deaths in the United States, and whereas gun homicides and assaults are concentrated in cities, with more than half of all gun homicides in the nation occurring in 42 cities, and whereas cities across the nation, including Verona, are working to end the senseless violence with evidence-based solutions, and whereas protecting public safety in the communities that they serve is a mayor's highest responsibility, and whereas support for the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens goes hand in hand with keeping guns away from those who are a danger to themselves or others, and whereas mayors, council members, and law enforcement officers, in partnership with local violence intervention activists and resources, know their communities best, are the most familiar with local criminal activity and how to address it, and are best positioned to understand how to keep their citizens safe. And whereas gun violence prevention is more important than ever as we see gun violence continue to impact communities across the country. Whereas in January 2013, Hadia Pendleton was tragically shot and killed at age 15, and on June 6, 2025, to recognize the 28th birthday of Hadia Pendleton, born June 2, 1997, people across the United States will recognize National Gun Violence Awareness Day and wear orange in tribute to Hadia Pendleton and other victims of gun violence and the loved ones of those victims. And whereas the idea was inspired by a group of Hadia's friends who asked their classmates to commemorate her life by wearing orange, they chose this color because hunters wear orange to announce themselves to other hunters when out in the woods, and orange is a color that symbolizes the value of human life. And whereas anyone can join the campaign by pledging to wear orange on June 6th, the first Friday in June 2025, to help raise awareness about gun violence. And whereas by wearing orange on June 6, 2025, people across the United States will raise awareness about gun violence and honor the lives of gun violence victims and survivors. And whereas we renew our commitment to reduce gun violence and pledge to do all that we can to keep firearms out of the hands of people who should not have access to them, and encourage responsible gun ownership to keep our families and communities safe, now therefore be it resolved that I, Mayor Luke Diaz of the City of Verona, Wisconsin, declare the first Friday in June 6, 2025, to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day. I encourage all citizens to support their local community's efforts to prevent the tragic effects of gun violence and to honor and value human lives. And that concludes the mayor's business. With that, we'll move on to item 7, which is announcements. Any announcements from the council? Seeing shaking heads. Oh, Alder Tuckerlin.
I have a few more anniversary cards for everybody to sign. I'll be passing those around.
Excellent. With that, unless there is another announcement. With that, we will move on to item 8, which is the administrator's report. Mr. Olick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, our staff continues to pursue grants. So at the next meeting, we're looking to have 2 enabling resolutions for what's called the Transportation Alternatives Program grant. One project, these are in the offing a few years, is to widen the path across from what's effectively Casey's on Main Street, County Highway M. You'll note there's a large retaining wall and a pretty kind of narrow sidewalk over there. So that's one of the grant applications. Again, a few years off. The other one is for the Military Ridge State Trail. Even though this is typically out a few years, if there's leftover money in the program, they'll sometimes back fund projects. So that's the rationale behind that. So you'll see a couple of those grant applications at your next meeting. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Olick? All right. With that, we'll move on to item 9, which is the engineer's report. Ms. Fisher.
Thank you. For the Country View Road reconstruction projects, on Phase 2, construction continues, specifically on the ponds, utilities, and roadway excavation. For the Legion Street reconstruction project, construction is expected to start in June. For Mark Drive reconstruction, Phase 1 had the bid opening last week, and recommendation for approval is on the agenda tonight. construction for that project is anticipated to start this summer. For Ardent Glen, Phase 3B is under construction with Phase 4 expected to start this summer. And for the Apex at Verona, the contractor added the turn lane on County Highway PD at Harvest Moon Trail earlier in May. And finally, the city is in the process of updating its stormwater webpage, and the planned updates include additional information about stormwater basin restoration, native vegetation, stormwater maintenance, dredging, prescribed burns, and other educational information to assist the community members. So with that, I can take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Fisher? Alder Swanson.
One item that you didn't mention but had highlighted for us is regarding the Lower Badger Mill Creek Interceptor. You want to say something about that real quick?
Sure. Yeah, I mentioned that at a previous meeting, but there is a MMSD, so Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District project, and that is to install the interceptor. And so the first phase of that project was done this past year, and that was from County Highway PD to Shady Oak Lane. And then the second phase is from Shady Oak Lane to Midtown Road, and that project started in May. So that'll just be kind of on the north side of the city, and people may see reconstruction, or actually construction happening. That is a separate project that's being run through Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the engineer's report? Seeing no further questions, we'll move on to item 10, which is committee reports. First up, we have 10A, which is the Verona Economic Development Commission. Mr. Alec.
Thank you, Mayor. The Verona Economic Development Commission met on May 15th, 2025, and reviewed a revolving loan fund application by Alice Good, LLC, requesting an economic development loan from the revolving loan fund in the amount of $34,000 with an interest rate of 5% and a term of 5 years. The commission also reviewed other financial statements submitted by the company. Upon review and discussion, the Verona Economic Development Commission voted unanimously to recommend the council approve the loan.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions, comments, or motions on this item? Alder Swanson.
Move to approve resolution number 24-015, approving an economic development loan agreement in the amount of $34,000 and related legal documents between the City of Verona and Alice Good LLC, conditioned upon final review and approval of the loan agreement and related legal documents by the city administrator and city attorney.
Motion by Alder Swanson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Harrison. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? Alder Tucker Long and then myself.
I'm really excited to see a business in town taking advantage of our Economic Development Fund loans. And if anybody out there is thinking about starting a business or expanding a business, I would encourage them to take a look at our website and take a look at the options we have available to help support businesses here in Verona.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Alder Tucker Long said. We have this loan fund. We want to help small businesses, develop in the city of Verona. But we can only offer it. If no one steps up and takes advantage of it, I mean, that's all we can do. So I would encourage people, if they got a good business idea, to look into it. And also just, as far as this one specifically, I think Alice Good is a wonderful coffee shop in the city, and I'm so glad that they are doing well and looking to kind of grow their business. Other questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving resolution number 25-015, approving a loan agreement with Alice Good LLC for an economic development loan in the amount of $34,000 with the conditions specified in the packet, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. With that, we will move on to 10B, which is Finance Committee. Alder Lytle.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion for payment of the bills in the amount of $769,687.05.
Motion by Alder Lytle. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Harrison. Questions or comments on the motion? Or Alder Lytle, I should say.
Yeah, just a little explanation. This is a little out of the ordinary because we did not have a finance committee meeting this evening. So this is just going directly to the council. The two major items that make up those bills are a City of Madison Metro payment for quarter 2 and a payment to Danton Construction for a portion of the Epic Park project.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions or comments on the motion to pay the bills? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of paying the bills in the amount specified signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Anything further from finance?
Nothing. Thank you.
Excellent. With that, we'll move on to 10C, which is Public Works, Sewer, and Water Committee. Alder Tucker Long.
Yes, I would like to move that we award the contract for Project 2024-105 Mark Drive Reconstruction Phase 1 to James Peterson Sons, Inc. in the amount of $2,008,878.08 for the Mark Drive Reconstruction Phase 1.
Motion by Alder Tucker Long. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Weiss, I believe. Alder Tucker Long.
Thank you. 4 bids were received for this project. Our engineer estimate, including contingency, was $2,379,115.50. The apparent low bid we received was by James Peterson Sons, Inc. for $2,008,878.08. James Peterson Sons, Inc. has experience working on similar projects throughout Wisconsin. Public Works staff are of the opinion the company is qualified and capable of performing the work as specified. Staff recommend the contract be awarded.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions or comments on this item? Seeing no, oh, sorry, Alder Lytle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was pleased to see we got good bids. I note that Parisi, who completed the Eastview reconstruction, was not our low bidder, was not selected. I know, speaking with neighbors that lived in that area and lived through the process over there last year, that there were a lot of lessons learned coming out of that. And I'm hoping among staff and our engineering consultants, we can apply some of those and bring a new contractor up to speed on some of the things specifically around communicating with local residents on the status of different phases of the construction. So I know we have great folks that will be thinking about that, but since it is a new contractor, it's going to be that much more important.
Other questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of awarding the contract for Project 2024-105 Mark Drive Reconstruction Phase 1 as described by Alder Tucker Long signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Anything further from Public Works?
Nothing further.
Excellent. With that, we'll move on to item 11, which is old business. Our one and only item is 11A, which is a discussion and possible action regarding the redevelopment of property and potential use of affordable housing funds for property located at 1050 North Edge Trail, Verona. Mr. Alec.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have Mr. Sean O'Brien here with us tonight, who's going to give kind of a presentation. But the applicant for the proposed mixed-use development at 1050 North Edge Trail is requesting the city consider providing financial assistance to support the inclusion of potential affordable housing units at this location. As of now, the Affordable Housing Fund has a balance of $2,849,054.49.
Mr. O'Brien.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sean O'Brien. I'm with North Point Development, and I wanted to just walk through our ask, but start at the beginning because there are some newer faces. This is a process that we've been working on for almost a year now, and we had brought this project through for building approvals. We have our zoning approvals in place, and now we're taking that next step to see if we can get some financial support through the Affordable Housing Fund that the City of Verona has. First, just a reminder for you folks that maybe haven't seen this for 6 months, we're talking about the former Monk's property right next to Casey's on Highway M. And that property has had many different restaurant options over the course of the years, none of which have been overly successful or have been long-standing. Up until I think a couple of years ago, Monk's was the latest, business that operated out of there. And the owner of Monk's decided to take that property and turn it into a housing development. At the time, they gained approvals from the city of Verona for a 64-unit project. However, they never executed on those building permits. I don't know exactly what the reason might be, but I can tell you that the housing construction industry has a lot of challenges these days with interest rates and construction costs in general. And so they put the whole site up for sale. We stepped in probably in June of last year, brought a majority of their plans back through. Instead of 64 units, we brought it down to 60 with a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. And we also maintained about 2,400 to 2,500 square feet of retail space that would be on the first floor. So it would be a mixed-use building. Just another rendering of the property. Again, this wasn't too much of a deviation from what was originally approved many years ago. And it's I think a very sharp looking building. It would remain that way. And our goal would be to switch the building from a 64 unit market rate to a 60 unit affordable housing project, so a workforce housing project. Our income targets would be from 30% of CMI to up to 80%. So we would have 30, 50, and 80% of county median income that would be eligible for the units of all 3 sizes. There's just a picture of our patio. And then this picture kind of shows some of the amenities that we have in the bottom left. That's our standard kitchen. We typically are doing solid surface countertops, nice cabinets, stainless steel appliances, LVP flooring, backsplashes in the kitchens. So we're really building, I think, a quality product for our tenants. And then we also have other amenities. Typically, all of our projects will have some sort of workout room and community space as well. Just some overall details, again, going through this really quickly for those that may be hearing this for the first time. Again, it is 60 units. We have 36 one-bedrooms, 11 twos, and 13 threes. So there's that nice mix. I mean, I don't see a lot of market rate developments bringing 3 bedrooms into their developments these days, just for cost or other reasons. We've tried to get at least 20% of our project to have that larger unit for families. The project will also have underground parking and surface stalls that were all approved by City Council in July of last year. Maybe it was August or September. That get a little bit screwed up in all the meetings that we go to. But all of the projects that we build, they have on-site management. We'll have the community room, fitness room, parcel room, the outdoor patio. All the units come with washer and dryer included, and our buildings also come with free internet for all of our tenants. In terms of timeline, when we were up here last year making a request for the funds, we were pursuing different financial grants to make the project financially feasible. One of those main grants we were unsuccessful in, which is why we've gone dormant here for about 6 months. In the meantime, we went to WHEDA and applied for competitive state tax credits, which we will find out about either this week or early next week if we were successful in that application. So if we get good news in the coming weeks, we'll be able to really start moving this project forward. Hopefully by September, we would get our construction bids out and the ability to pull permits in November or towards the end of the year. With a 12 or 13-month construction schedule, we'd hopefully be housing people by the end of 2026 and then have the building fully occupied no later than April of 2027. So as I sat in front of this group last year, we had, described the project as we applied for these new tax credits. And as we're standing here now, there's some changes that I want to make the council aware of that we have made to the project, and we think for the better. One of the first changes is that we're committing to a higher sustainability certification than we were in the past. Typically, North Point Development has developed projects that have PV solar on the roofs. We've used the Wisconsin Greenbelt Homes as a certification for our projects, and we've gone after the Energy Star multifamily new construction certification, which makes the unit very sustainable, very energy efficient. We're trying to take that a step further with this this new application where we would go after a LEED Zero energy certification for the property. And again, that would be in addition to working with Focus on Energy and going after the Energy Star certifications as well. The other major change is typically when we build our workforce housing and senior affordable housing projects, we work with Lutheran Social Services or other agencies, Way Forward, groups to that nature that will provide the property with a service coordinator and what we in the industry call a light touch supportive service model. And what the light touch supportive service model means is, we are working with someone from an organization that does have service coordinators and case managers. However, they work mainly as we do lease up and figure out who is going to be living in the building if they have a need for services, and then they come back to the property once a quarter, kind of do a check-in, again, see if folks have needs or ways to connect those folks if they have a desire to be connected to services that they're eligible for in the community, whether it be the municipality or the county or the VA, bunch of different options. With this new plan, our project would include, to cover out of the operating budget, cost to have an on-site caseworker on a weekly basis. And so we actually have a dedicated spot, a dedicated office for that, that relationship on the site. And then we would bring someone into the property that would have scheduled hours on a weekly basis. It's a light amount of hours, but it is on a weekly basis, and it's much better than the quarterly touches that we're seeing currently with our partners. And then finally, I think one of the major changes that we're making and that we're bringing back to the group is that we're asking for less of the Affordable Housing Fund. When we were here, again, 6 months ago, again, we were going after different financing applications, and that caused for a much larger gap, but the trade-off would have been that we would have been able to get the project started sooner. And as you put these properties under contract, especially ones that are commercial redevelopments of vacant buildings kind of just sitting there, you don't get a lot of time, the time that's really necessary to put an affordable housing or workforce housing project together. Typically that could take anywhere between 3 to 4 years to come to fruition. And so we were able to negotiate out an extension of our option to purchase of the property, and then that allowed us to apply for the competitive tax credits with WHEDA. And in terms of, our ask, we were originally at $35,000 per unit. We've reduced that now. What I'm going to be asking for tonight is $20,000 a unit, or $1.2 million out of the Affordable Housing Fund. Just for some context, the last couple projects that the city had supported with some sort of financial investment ranged between $35,000 and $40,000 per unit in financial assistance. Those were both through TIFs, which is a great resource if you're in a TID district or if one's going to be created for your project. The one, I guess two differences between what we're asking for now and, a TID financial assistance package would be, one, everything that's provided to the property stays with the property and fills the financial gap. Whereas in TIF, it's usually pay as you go. And so a lot of those funds end up servicing like the interest carry or interest expense over the course of the pay-go TIF. So, in this instance, the entire amount of funds could go to fill a financial gap. And the other main difference is with TIF, as you're funding back the property taxes, through the monetary obligation, that money is no longer available to the city. So, it just is it's a refund of those property taxes. At the end of 20 years, that monetary obligation is paid off by the city. It's at zero. There's nothing at the back end. What we're asking for here is, instead of having a grant, we're actually asking to utilize these funds as a loan. And with this loan, we'd be asking as well that the city make a commitment to the project, actually, close on the loan documents, but we wouldn't expect those city funds to come into the project until we've reached certificate of occupancy, which is similar to what you would see in a TIF arrangement. So we're not asking for the city to make an investment before we've built the project, but after we've built it and, gained, build or certificates of occupancy. I know one of the things that we talked about last time that was, needed a little bit more discussion was just the loan term that was associated with this ask. Again, we're looking for a 17-year loan term. The reason for that is that with the tax credit program, there's a 15-year compliance period. And the state of Wisconsin allocates both tax credits, and they would expect us to carry a first lien mortgage that basically doesn't allow for the property to throw off significant amounts of cash flow. If you can imagine governmental program, they wouldn't want to see that they're handing out all these resources only for developers to be raking in cash on an annual basis. So when they model these with the state, their program sets it so there's minimal amounts of cash flow in the project, basically that goes above and beyond caring for the standard operating costs and funding replacement reserves at the project, and then servicing the debt on the project. Some of the benefits that I see for this ask, and a lot of communities are starting to use the affordable housing funds in this way. We're working with Fitchburg right now on their first. I know the city of Sun Prairie is taking their affordable housing funds, and they're going to be opening that up for a tax credit project in the future. And other communities like Madison and Dane County have also put together programs to help participate and finance affordable housing. So this isn't something that's new, but it would be something that would provide a lot of units for the city of Verona at a relatively low cost per unit. And one of the things, and my background is working with the state and doing housing policy. When we were looking at funding projects and working with other pools and pots of money that we had, we always looked at what's the leverage ratio. So every dollar that we put in, what other dollars are being brought to the table? And so in this case, the city of Verona's affordable housing funds would be leveraged 18 to 1. So every $1 the city of Verona is providing to support the project, we're bringing $18 of something else, whether it be tax credit equity or other grants. Again, it's a project that would be mixed use for a current vacant commercial site, one that would increase the tax basis over $100,000 a year. Again, that would be something that the city of Verona would also be able to keep, over the course of, 15, 20, 30 years. That tax increment increase is something to take note of. And then, kind of going back to the TIF versus grant, again, a lot of times these TIF funds go to service debt, whereas, this money would be just for supporting the financial gap in the project. I did run an analysis, so I'm not Ehlers by any means, but I did my best. I think based on our projections that given a new TID district, this project could qualify for somewhere up to $2 million in total TID MRO assistance through the city. So it's much less overall, than what it might be able to qualify if it were in a TID district. And then this just gives you an example of some of the different unit mix that we have and the associated rents that come along with them. I'm not sure what the market rents in Verona are for some of the newer projects, but I think that the last time I saw, I think a one bedroom was about $1,800 a month. And some of the two bedrooms are going for $2,200 or somewhere along those amounts. And so there is a significant discount to market. And the goal of this program, we go to WIDA, we ask for these tax credits. If WIDA provides these tax credits to the project, we then in turn make a commitment to cap our rents at an affordable level to folks that are eligible at that income level to rent. And then what that means is that tenant is no longer rent income or rent burdened. So they're not paying more than 30% of their rent, 30% of their income towards rent, which puts more money in their pocket to allow for them to spend their money on other discretionary items or other needs that they might have. And then if you look on the left-hand side, I guess two things that I would point out. If we are awarded the state LIHTC credits, the two gaps that we have on the project are the ones that we're looking for the affordable housing loan to help us with, and then we'll also be applying to WIDA for their vacancy to vitality, which is a new state program. The state set aside a couple $100 million for vacant commercial property to be converted into housing, and so we would feel really good about getting those funds in October of this year. And then lastly, I would just highlight that the county has committed $3 million to the project, or roughly about $50,000 to the unit, $50,000 per unit already to the project if we're successful. And that loan would be I think it's a 2% simple interest 40-year loan. And so with that, I guess I'll just kind of open it up for questions, or maybe I can go back to this slide. But yeah, again, we're looking to see if you have any feedback, if this is something that the council thinks is a good use of the Affordable Housing Fund. You know, if we get our call from WIDA and it's good news in a couple of days, you know, we have to, in a very short period of time, have to make some significant financial investments to move the project forward. And, you know, with the gaps that we have left in the project, just want to hear your feedback if this is something that the city is interested in partnering with us on.
Thank you for your presentation. I guess we'll start out with questions for Mr. O'Brien right now, if anyone has any questions to lead off. Alder Tucker-Long, and then Alder Swanson, then Alder Harrison.
Thank you. I have a quick question on the services. The services for the couple days a week would be provided at the new location. Would they also be provided at the Classic?
So the services that would be provided at this location would be paid for by the property. And so technically, this property would be under different ownership, likely I should take a step back. The tax credits would be sold likely to a different investor. The Classic's tax credits were sold to First Business Bank, and it's its own LLC. And so as, you know, the Argus would be paying for these services, the expectation would be that the services would go to that project.
Thank you. And then the 1.2 million loan number, how critical is that specific number? Like, for instance, if we approved it for 1 million, would that tank the project?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's an interesting environment right now. And so, you know, at 1.2 million, you know, I sit up here and say we can get the project done if we're awarded tax credits from WIDA. If it's something that's, you know, close to that, we have some work to do, but that's, you know, that's totally, you know, acceptable as well. So it's really tough question to ask. So if you were to say, you know, would you, you know, take this amount, we would certainly try to make it work. But at the same time, you know, if the city were to invest at this level, you know, I can say that, you know, we would be able to move the project forward 100%.
Alder Swanson, then Alder Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple comments, and then they'll tie into a question that I'll cap it off with. So first, I am one of the new faces that is not as familiar with the project, but and this project, when it goes up, would not be in the district I represent. But I want to note that, like, a lot of the things that you're talking about, so like the positive benefits are things that I talk about all the time as far as things that Verona needs. Like, I'm really happy to see housing generally aimed at, you know, workforce, affordable housing. It's one of the things that Verona, I think, is most in need of categorically. In addition, like, having the on-site services provided is something that I think is really reasonable, and it upsets me fundamentally that we don't see that more often across the board. So I think it's really prescient of you to be including this kind of process to meet the needs of the populations you're working with. And the last part that ties into sort of the question I'm going to ask is I also think that the bit about the energy certification and the sustainability aspect is so important, especially in an environment where, you know, at the federal level, we're seeing increasing hostility. And it's weird to say increasing, right? Because they've been there for such a short time and they're already pretty hostile. So it's like accelerating even more is kind of wacky. But with that in mind, you know, they've been talking about doing things like cutting back on their support for the energy sustainability, and I'm curious as to how you would demonstrate that you'd be holding up to those standards that are in place now, if they were cut back later on from that like federal level guidance.
Yeah. Well, so long as they don't cancel any of the programs, Energy Star Construction, it's a certification, and I did hear that they may be canceling the Energy Star programs on appliances and things like that. So, you know, those programs may, you know, move around a little bit, but in terms of getting the certifications, so the multifamily Energy Star new construction, that's going to be a requirement that's tied to the Dane County financing. So when I build the project, they allow us to use 90% of the funds, and then I go back, in this case would be significant, the last 10%, I can't access those funds until I provide them with Energy Star certifications. Also with the LEED Zero Energy certification, that would be a requirement that's tied to my tax credit documents from WIDA, and so that's actually a much even bigger issue that I actually have to show that we have these certifications in order to be able to move through the program and get the documents that are needed. from WIDA, which is the biggest stick of them all. But with that said, like if for some reason, one of the certification programs were canceled, I don't know, we'd have to work with the county to say, how do we replace this? I mean, I sat on a Zoom call last week with the city of Madison and the county as we talked through a lot of these certifications and what are some of the challenges and what do they mean. And really, without getting the actual certification itself, you can still show that your unit models to a certain energy standard. By having continuous insulation on the exterior of the building, having fresh air, going to the units, continuous fans running. There's certain things that are on those checklists that you could show that your unit is sustainable and energy efficient, including working with Focus on Energy, which isn't even a certification. When we work with them, we define everything that's going into our building. They say, hey, you're eligible for this sort of rebate. At the end of the project, they do a verification and they say, how did we do? What is the energy use and intensity that we're above and beyond what the standard, building cones are. And so there's just a lot of checks in that way. And in terms of like financial support, our big financial, pieces of the project are coming from the county that are requesting these certifications and from WIDA. The only real, federal dollars are the 45L credits, which is $500 per unit, which barely pays for the certification themselves. I think usually it's about $30,000 to get the Energy Star certification through all the testing and verification. So, it's not a major loss. And then, I think there's a 30% solar credit, and these systems cost about $80,000 to put in for most of our buildings.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Alder Harrison.
Thanks. Yeah, and I want to say I think I'd support this. This is I think, a good idea and good way to spend our affordable house money. But I do have some questions about like the case manager on site. I'm interested to know how you identify households who need case management, attention. And what the role of a caseworker at other comparable properties has been in your experience. What are they doing for the most part? How are we identifying people for them to go and work with, and so on?
So I'll start by saying I'm not an expert. And I'll also say that, supportive services are a choice. And so, you can't make taking supportive services a requirement of tenancy. And, we offer the services to everyone. And, it's a matter of whether or not, a tenant would be interested in gaining those. So that, they're not forced into it.
Is that on a elective basis completely then?
Correct.
Just on their application?
Yep,
Yeah,
correct.
gotcha.
But it also, when tenants come to the property, certain tenants, for example, we work with a lot of vets. And we house a lot of vets. And when we're, going through our lease up, we'll have weekly calls with the VA, our sort of supportive service group, LSS, the county, and we talk through how do we generate interest in the property. And a lot of times if we're getting, let's say, a vet to come into the building, they may already have case management in place and that support structure in place. Now, if they don't, then they would integrate with, our service coordinator, or in this case, case manager, and, work with them. And really, again, the challenge is just what is that touch? What is the level of participation that they could get into if they're, only coming to the property on a quarterly basis? And really, it's more of a coordination instead of actual, case management, where you say, okay, if you need these resources, you have to go here. You have to work with the VA. You have to work with, the senior center, or joining forces for families, or, working with Badger Prairie Needs Network. And it's more of what's available and connecting folks, or if they have specific issues, working together to identify, what those might be. And I think that's a lot different than when you're having someone on site who can, have more of an interaction with a specific family or household, and really get to, be involved. I mean, in terms of like, even if you had someone who's a case manager, caseworker there, 40 hours a week, there's still going to be needs that are outside of that period of time, but it would just provide for more opportunities for, when needs arise to kind of, interact with each other.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Alder Hoax, then Alder Chuckalong.
Thank you. Just a couple questions. Since you guys were involved with the Classic, how full, is it 100% occupancy right now?
We have 61 out of the 63 units occupied at the moment. So we have two that are vacant, and it's maintained over 95% for, basically since we leased it up.
Is there a wait list going, or was there a wait list?
Typically, you wouldn't see like a wait list for projects. You keep like an interest list. And so there's an interest list on the property. And it just depending on, which unit comes available, there's different, areas of marketing that we would do to get those units filled, but usually they fill back up pretty quickly.
Sure. And then do you foresee similar situation here with this one? I mean, before you even open, being 60, 70, 80% rented?
Yeah, I mean, our experience, we just opened a project in Monona. We opened one in Oregon. I mean, typically you see about a 50% pre-leasing. With the tax credit requirements, you can't review an application and their income certification too early. It's only good for about 3 months. And so usually you start your lease up 3 months in advance. That has gotten us to about 50% occupancy. And then the other 50% is full in about 3 months, where you get all the way up to 100% or close to it.
Okay. And then is this, without going through numbers from different municipalities, is this ask similar to what you guys have done in other municipalities, and how has that gone? Have you guys received this kind of ask and then actually built something that's already up?
Yeah. So I would say all of. Are you saying just from municipalities or from Dane County as well?
Either one.
So Dane County has invested their funds in all of our Dane County projects at varying levels. I would say that this project that we're talking about tonight is the highest per unit that the county has invested in, but they're also because they're seeing much larger financial gaps in projects. When we've worked with the communities utilizing TIF, it's ranged anywhere from $15,000 to $35,000, $40,000 per unit. And then we've also worked with communities for direct loans, like the city of Fitchburg, that was about $15,000 per unit. And so it ranges just depending on the financial gap of the project.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I think I appreciate the presentation, not only coming back to explain it to us and some of the newer folks here, but certainly the new ask, I think, makes a lot more sense. Looking at the fund balance, but also just makes more sense when you explain how much other places may have put in per unit, and this is significantly less than that. But I think it also shows that you guys are listening to kind of what we had said 6 months ago, not whenever you came in the last time. Shows you're actually listening to what we wanted to see. And I do appreciate that there are going to be services there. It may not be exactly what people want, but we can hash that out. But I think I'd be on board with this. I think this fund, certainly, with the amount of money we have in there, I think this is a wise use of a chunk of it, and not all of it. And I think it, doesn't open up the city to owning, or, what we talked about before, owning a property or building different properties and doing things that we really probably shouldn't do as a city. So I appreciate that you guys have listened to what our feedback was the first time. So I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Alder Chuckalong.
Okay, I have two things. One is the distribution of the rooms that you showed us, the 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom of the units. I'm sorry, not the rooms, the units. How do you determine how many 1, 2, or 3 bedroom units to have at 30%, 50%, and 80%? Could you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, a lot of that follows the scoring criteria with WIDA. And so they're looking for a mix that has, at least 10% of all the bedroom sizes at the varying income levels. And then they're also looking to see that you have like I said, that you have all of the income levels. I think I just said that twice. All the income levels at different bedroom sizes, but it really ends up just being, a mix to give ourselves the best chance of getting a tax credit from the state.
Okay, and then my next comment is that, I also really appreciate you coming back and listening to our feedback that I think is really helpful. I appreciate the fact that this is a unit that is going to be able to get up and off the ground really quickly because we desperately need housing, especially workforce housing in Verona. And I really like the addition of services. I think that's really awesome. And I'd like to see us as a city maybe look into partnering if it's possible in the future, because we have a lot of departments that are also interested in offering services like the senior center and our police department and things. So we should definitely talk about collaborations and providing services citywide in the future if possible. And then I also appreciate the fact that this is not going to be our entire affordable housing fund, because I do still feel it's very, very important for us to look into what, former Alder Posey talked about with paths to ownership and providing that gap housing as well. So not to discount the importance of affordable housing, but I appreciate the fact that this wouldn't be putting all of our eggs in one housing need basket per se. So are we looking for a motion today?
I don't believe so, no. This is a very much.
This is just feedback?
Take the temperature, and so, yeah, I guess.
Okay.
I would open it up generally then to the council that, some people have already said, but whether you think it's a good idea, whether you think it's a bad idea,
Okay.
and the amount.
Okay. In that case, I guess just wrap up my comments by saying that I really like this project. I like the location. I like the amenities and services being included. Obviously, I'm always in favor of things costing the city less than more, but I'm okay with, slightly over 1 million, so.
Alder Weiss.
Just to reiterate some of the things that have already been said, but I in concurrence with some of the other board members, I agree that this seems like a great project. It's something that Verona needs. I find the contribution ratio, I forget what that's called. I find that compelling that there's other, that the leverage ratio, that there's that we're using the money in a way that gets leverage from other investors as well as from the county. I think that is an effective way to try to use our money, try to get a lot of bang for the buck that way. So I think that both the level and the rate and the term, those seem very reasonable. And then especially based upon it being seemingly kind of in the middle of what other similar communities have been, it seems like this is kind of the rate at which something like this can be made to work. So, in broad terms, I'm in favor of this.
Other thoughts, Alder Braithwaite?
Yeah, in general, I'm in favor of this as well. But I did want to ask the Debbie Downer question, and that is, what's the plan if you don't receive the grant or WIDA thing next week?
Yeah, that's really, I think that's, unfortunately, if we get bad news next week, this could be all for naught. Because I don't think that the owners are going to give us another year to reapply or to make any changes. So, fingers crossed. And it's really, if we bring this idea forward, if we're able to, get that good news or to get that, award from WIDA, it's nice to know that, whether or not the council supports it. Hopefully we get the award. But yeah, if we don't, then it gets really difficult to move the project forward.
That's pretty much a deal breaker.
I would think so. I mean, the challenge is, owning, I don't think we have an interest in owning Monk's Bar, without a vision of how we make that work going forward. And so, with that being said, I don't believe that the owners of Monk's Bar would give us a significant amount of more time to retool the project.
Other feedback from the council? Alder Hunky, and then myself.
I'm just happy to give it. I did talk to Mr. O'Brien previously because I knew I wasn't going to potentially be here. And I agree with what I've heard people say. I was really grateful that you really listened to what we said. And I'm supportive of this as well.
Yeah, calling on myself. Yeah, I'm generally supportive of the project. Kind of like Alder Tucker Long said, though, it is nicer when things cost less money. I understand finances can be finances. And I do want to say I really love the sustainability options on the project. I think that's really helpful. I think in my opinion, it should be on every project. I know we can't quite dictate that 100%, at least for now. And then finally, I just, I wanted to mention that, the city is, our budget for 2026 is a long way off, but we are starting it this summer. And if, the city potentially could be in a position to offer services to a location, if that location were, paying money to the city. But just putting that out there. Other feedback on the project? Seeing no other hands, we will conclude then with this topic and move on to item 12, which is new business.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Thank you. We have 12A, which is a discussion of possible action regarding the land use agreement between the State of Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources and the City of Verona regarding the Military Ridge State Trail. Mr. Aulick.
Thank you, Mayor. The proposed land use agreement will create a partnership between the City of Verona and the State of Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. It will allow the City of Verona to replace the 3 bridges and pave the Military Ridge State Trail for the 2-mile segment between County PB and Wildcat Way. That's old PB, I think. All good. And the city will be responsible for the maintenance of the trail surface for the 13 years of the agreement. The agreement has an optional 2-year extension. The State of Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources will care for the vegetation and the remainder of the right-of-way, AKA non-paved surfaces. In addition, the Wisconsin DNR will operate the trail. And I would just mention tonight we have Assistant City Administrator Ann Frywald, who knows the agreement pretty well, and then we also. Yeah. And then we have construction engineer Joe Jersa here if there's any sort of construction or technical questions.
Questions, comments? Alder Braithwaite.
I want a clarification on the bridges. So could you state that again? Is it, am I understanding the city would pursue replacement of the bridges?
Yeah, yes, we would be responsible for replacing the bridges. However, the DNR has been so kind to contribute $49,500 towards the bridges because when it hits $50,000, it's an actual budget allocation. So got them as high as we could go that way.
How much do we think the bridges are going to cost? You can see how much 49,000 is.
Joe, do you want to answer that?
Mr. Jersa?
I think I know what the answer is, but I'll let you answer it.
Looking at preliminary, green light. Looking at our preliminary estimates for the 3 structures, we'll get estimates from a designer once a design consultant is selected, but prefabricated or box culvert type structures have been looked at, and roughly $300,000 per structure, close to $1 million for the 3 bridges in total.
Thank you. Alder Humke.
Yeah, I mean, this is my question initially when we were doing this. Why is the DNR not responsible for this? If we weren't going to pave it, it would still need to be fixed. Is there a reason that they would not be responsible for this?
No? Anyone want to take that one? Mr. Aulick?
I'll try to. They'll be responsible for it, but it won't be on your timeline. Put it that way. They're years out. They're actually looking at the trail to replace bridges. I want to say, was it 2029?
2029, 2030.
Yeah. So it's out a healthy ways. Plus, if we don't replace the bridges, the paving is not going to work out either. You want to have the bridges first in place, and then the paving.
Alder Tucker Long, and then myself.
Can you explain why we have to have the bridges first and then the paving? Is it possible? I understand that the current bridges can't bear the weight of the pavement, but do the bridges have to be paved when the rest of the items are paved?
Mr. Jersa?
So the reason we would normally do the bridges first is because the pavement would be damaged by the bridge construction for getting the large equipment, the cranes, the other large construction equipment that would have to access each bridge site, which are varied locations along the trail. The paving thickness is not large enough to sustain that type of equipment, so it would essentially be damaged during the bridge construction and have to be replaced then shortly after it would have been paved initially.
But if they're not looking at starting bridge replacement until 2029, what is the expected life of the pavement that we're talking about having?
Well, let me just clarify something about what Jamie said. Our bridges were not included in that 2029, 2030 work plan necessarily. So you can't assume that they would be doing the bridge repair in 2029 or 2030. The DNR is working on the bridges along the Military Ridge Trail, and they're going to start replacing bridges at that time.
So it could be longer, is what you're saying? Okay.
Yes, it could be longer.
Okay. So what is the expected life, or what is the, yes, expected life expectancy of the pavement that we're looking at putting on the trail?
I think a typical asphalt pavement lifespan, 25 to 30 years.
Okay. And if the DNR damages the pavement while fixing the bridges or constructing new bridges, would they be responsible for fixing it?
I would have to review the agreement on that. I'm not familiar.
Mr. Kleinmeyer.
So the agreement that's before you tonight is anticipating that the city's going to do that work, if I'm correct. And so I don't think that this agreement addresses the DNR doing the bridge work. It anticipates that the city's going to do it. Now, there is a sentence in the agreement, we're the permittee, by the way. So we added a sentence that says, for avoidance of doubt, the permittee may choose in its sole discretion not to proceed with construction for upgrading the surface and infrastructure of the premises due to financial considerations. So simply approving this agreement doesn't, I mean, if it turns out that you're going to have financial difficulties because the cost of the bridges are so significant, the city does have the ability to not proceed. And depending on when the city takes that action, and if there's been grant funding that's provided already, we have certain obligations with respect to that. But there is at least that out clause if it turns out that there's serious concerns regarding costs.
So you're saying that if we enter into this agreement and then we find we can't pay for the bridges, does that mean we still get to pave the path, or is we're back to square one with negotiating?
I think we're going to have to talk to the DNR about that. I would say that we don't know the answer to that question at this point.
Okay. Personally, I'm finding it hard to evaluate this current agreement without knowing what alternate agreement we're giving up by going into this, or what happens if we want out of this agreement. I understand that the agreement we're talking about tonight is under the assumption that the city is going to pay for the bridges, but it's hard to evaluate if that is a good deal for us to enter into if we don't know what would have happened to the bridges if we don't do this agreement.
In other words, if you potentially say, look, the cost of the bridges is, and I'm just completely speculating here, okay? But the cost of the bridges is too much. And so while we understand that the DNR does not necessarily have this on its schedule now, it is a DNR trail, and we're going to look to see the DNR do that work in the future. Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with that analysis. But just, I mean, I don't think that we're going to get an agreement with the DNR on that issue. In other words, I think where you're at now is this, or you could say, look, we already know the price tag on the bridges. There's every expectation the costs are not going up. I'm sorry, they're not coming down, they're going up.
Right.
So at that point, like if as a council member you're not comfortable with that price tag, then you probably don't want to approve this agreement.
Okay.
Is what I would say.
Okay. And Joe or Ann, I'm not sure who would answer this question, but what is the cost of paving the trail? Like not bridges, just the trail.
I think the original estimates for paving the trail were about $400,000. I'd have to look back at our records.
Okay.
And I do want to be clear, and I think Joe can answer this maybe. It was my understanding that the bridge structural reports, they're in very terrible condition. They're fine for biking and walking, but if our PD is driving over them, or we're using our any kind of maintenance trucks or anything like that going over those bridges, I mean, there's more than just the pavement weight that we should be worried about here. But that's, I guess, maybe neither here nor there. We did put a grant together, was submitted on May 1st. It would help, it could give us $100,000 towards the grant, or perhaps 50% of the cost, but we won't know about that until September of this year.
So I guess my take at this point is that, yeah, I understand that it could damage the pavement to have the DNR do the bridges later, but we could pave the trail twice for less than it would cost us to do the bridges ourselves. So even if they destroyed all the pavement and we had to fix it and they didn't fix any of it as part of their construction, it would still be cheaper for us in the long run.
This might be more of a question for.
Sorry, I'm next.
Go ahead.
I have a question regarding the an admin report. So it says the state of Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources will care for the vegetation. What does that mean? Because they're not caring for it now. There's like invasive honeysuckle, like 3 deep from PB to the high school. I know none of you are the DNR, but if someone was from the DNR in the room, it's probably better that they're not. But what are they going to do? Like nothing? Like what are they legally obligated
I would
to do?
think, can I answer that? I think that they are managing that trail and the vegetation on either side of the pavement, as they do all recreational trails in the state of Wisconsin, and they don't have any plans of changing that.
Okay. Mr. Kleinmeyer?
Well, you just used the term legally obligated, so that's
Yeah.
why I jumped up here. I mean, it's their property. And so I think if I were in their shoes, and if I was if cost was an issue, I would say you want to maintain them to the point where you believe that it's reasonably safe for people to utilize the trail. And if cost is an issue, you're not going to worry about aesthetics. It's only going to be about a public safety issue.
Yeah, okay, I mean, I think that's more or less, yeah, if you have heavy dead branches, they get trimmed, stuff grows into the trail, it gets trimmed. If it's an invasive species and the environment's degrading, they're not gonna do anything about it. I think I'm 100% in favor of signing this agreement now for a couple of reasons. One, the trail should be paved. It should have been paved 20 years ago. Right now, the political window is open to pave the trail. At some point, it's gonna close. And if we wait a couple years, if we wait for the DNR to do their jobs and replace these very rickety bridges, like, to be honest, like, yeah, to DNR standards, maybe they'll replace them in 2029. They probably should have been replaced 5 years ago. And like, quite frankly, like, yes, the DNR is a much bigger organization than the city of Verona. We will maintain that trail better than they will. So I don't think, to me, like, the community, both in Verona and beyond, will be better off if we take over the trail. So I would 100% support this. I want it to happen. I want it to be paved. The MPO has done a kind of a general survey on travel and stuff like that, and they have comments, which is really cool, based on different parts of the map. And of course, the stuff in Verona is a bunch of people saying, hey, shouldn't this trail be paved? Because it can be dangerous in the spring when it gets muddy. People can't always use it in the winter. It goes to the high school. We want to make it so kids can have safe routes to school. We want to make it so people, if they want to get into Epic, they have an easier bike route. We're already dealing with a ton of traffic things. Every person we can get out of their car onto a bike or onto a bus will benefit everyone, in traffic and everything else. So I really strongly would urge everyone to support this so we can actually get it paved next year. And if the DNR is not going to really step up and maintain it, then I think it's better that we take it over, even if it costs more money, because the community will benefit. Alder Swanson.
Thank you. I guess the thing that I was hoping to ask about, which is just like how dire is the actual situation like right now? Like I'm not familiar with that stretch of trail. I haven't walked it in a long time. So just how immediate is the need to do something about it right now beyond like the general benefits of paving it as observed by the mayor?
I can speak to the structures. We did have structure inspections done through the consultant that's already been hired to evaluate the trail paving. And I would summarize the findings as the the existing structures would not carry the weight of equipment. So they are in need of replacement, I guess. Currently okay for the pedestrians, the bikes that are on the trail, not for large equipment.
Thank you.
Alder Host, and then Alder Braithwaite.
Thank you. So yeah, it sounds to me like the options are we move forward with this plan or we do nothing, because you can't pave over bridges that are not going to support the weight of that. So that doesn't seem like an option that works. I also don't like the $1 million price tag, but I do agree. I mean, I generally am not in favor of paving things, but I've been on that path in March, April, whenever. And it's terrible. So I think, yeah, I mean, maybe we find a local large company in Verona that could help us with some assistance financially with this, perhaps, to pay down some of that $1 million. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like waiting is not really the greatest idea. So I would agree with the mayor that I think we should probably move forward with this.
Alder Braithwaite.
I agree with your comments, Mayor, about now's the opportunity to sign this. I think having spent 9 years as a construction engineer with the DNR, I'm very familiar with this trail and the state of bridges all throughout the state of Wisconsin. These were rails trails. These were built for railroads 100 years ago. And like Sprywold said, work perfectly fine for bikes or light vehicle maintenance, but there's a lot of considerations. When a trail gets urbanized, it's also very hard to urbanize a state trail. But I think this is as close as we can get at the moment. I also think we could get this agreement in place now and adjust it, potentially even. I think it's in Verona's benefit to urbanize this trail. I think it's in the state's interest to urbanize this, to let Verona urbanize this trail. They can't maintain it to a level of standard that the Verona residents would like to see it built towards. And so, nor do they have to, right? So I think, to your earlier question, would it ever? Not unless the funding is there to do it, and I don't see that happening. So I think we could sign this agreement how it's written now. A couple of minor concerns. It looks like it commences in 2025, which I assume then would start that 13-year clock. So I'm not sure how long it would take us to get the money and to replace the bridges. And so if the clock could start upon the ability of the trail being paved would be in our benefit. Also to keep I'm not sure how the 13 years got established with the opportunity to increase to 2. I'm sure there was a lot of negotiation on that, but I would think it'd be in our benefit to have that either be extended indefinitely in 2-year increments, or have a longer initial window. I do share your concerns about the vegetation management. I also am concerned about how the DNR is going to manage the vegetation on a paved trail that they're not responsible for the maintenance of. And I think that's a concern that Verona should have. However, I think all of those concerns outweigh the potential use and enjoyment and just everything that can be gained for our stakeholders of having the trail paved. All the concerns that you laid out are all potential benefits that you laid out. So is this agreement perfect? I don't think so. I think it's far from perfect. I think the way that the state manages their trail, their funding model is far from perfect. I think, our plan to, as of right now, replace 3 bridges is not perfect. We're developing that plan, But I think I agree that this is our window. I am in favor of trying to urbanize this section. And quite honestly, the DNR has to realize that a lot of these state trails go through urban centers, and developing a mechanism to make this, we're a little bit ahead of other municipalities on this. They need to find a win-win solution so that some of this trail corridor maintenance they can drop the burden through urban locations and shift that responsibility and have it be a win-win. So it's sticky because we're one of the first to do it, but I think the win-win is there. This agreement, I think, gets us one step closer to be able to get the trail that we want eventually. That was a lot. Sorry.
I got a quick question for Mr. Aulick and then Alder Swanson. Mr. Aulick, did you have something to say about the money that was reserved in the budget?
Yep. So just so we know our finances on this project, right now, we have $1,236,854 allocated towards this project. That's a combination of residual prior pedestrian bike trail improvement construction projects, and also we did borrow for this project when we thought we were just paving the trail. So we're at 1.23 million right now in this account, just so everybody's aware.
Alder Swanson, then Alder Chuckerlong.
Thank you. So I have another question, which is regarding the clause about securing a path across Verona Area School District land from the trail to a nearby convenience store for the purpose of gassing up for snowmobiles. And I guess I'm concerned about driving snowmobiles onto school property where, you have children doing things like being children. And I say that as someone who works with children. Specifically those children, because that's presumably up by the high school. And I know those kids are, they are not the most cautious or space observant. I wonder what can maybe the city attorney speak to, like, what's our liability like?
Mr. Clymer?
We're not going to have any liability.
Okay.
And to be clear, this language used to be a lot more onerous for the city. Staff negotiated this down to base, and we've worked in good faith with the Snowmobile Association and the school district to try to find that path. And if we find it, I didn't know this, and you all might not too, there's actually language in our code right now where you can drive snowmobiles in the city of Verona. And so we're just going to add a clause to that to say this is where you can go. But this was a huge deal for the DNR and the Snowmobile Club. And so I would say we are working in good faith, so we're satisfying the clause. But I don't think that we can get it modified any further. But also I wouldn't be worried about liability.
Okay, thank you.
Alder Chuckerlong.
Okay, so I have two questions. The first is, we mentioned like wanting to start the clock later for the 13 years and potentially having more than one 2-year extension. Why do we want to extend the amount of time we're responsible for paying for the trail?
Alder Braithwaite, I guess technically we don't generally question other alders, but
Oh.
Alder Braithwaite is, or Mr. Clymer.
I can try to answer that question. I mean, so again, I honestly think that we started negotiating this agreement pre-COVID. I think that's actually true. And initially, it was going to be 3 separate contracts, design, construction, and maintenance. And I think the reason why we were always looking to, I think the thought process was, and I think maybe this goes to some of the mayor's comments, if the city of Verona is going to spend this amount of money on somebody else's land, we want to make sure, and you're doing this for all of the reasons that you've stated as it relates to transportation, obviously you can be a non-city resident, but it's a big issue for the city. We want to make sure that it continues to do what it is that we had envisioned from the get-go. And so initially, I think we probably had a longer period of time where we were going to maintain it because it was going to be like a a design contract that would flow into a construction contract, and then when the construction was done, I think it was initially like 15 years that we would have it. But I think that was the rationale, is if we're going to spend this money, yes, we understand that there's a maintenance cost, but then we know that it's going to be properly maintained in the way that we've envisioned it.
Okay. So then my second question is, how much of a budget shortfall do we have then compared to what we have? Because if we've only got 1.2 or 1.3 million, I mean, that's nowhere near enough if we're talking about maintenance for 13 years, plus the bridges, plus the paving.
Correct.
So if we
So-
saved 1.2 million just for the paving, it sounds like we are more than doubling this project?
No, we have 1.2 in the account towards this project already, so 1.236. And the construction estimate from Mr. Jursa was 2.125 million for the total cost of the bridges and the pavement.
And do we have an estimate for the maintenance?
I don't have anything handy at this time, no.
Okay, because if that's starting in 2025, we need to have the maintenance money now.
No, that would be starting whenever it's constructed, I would presume, right?
That is correct. The agreement, I'm pretty sure the agreement says our maintenance responsibilities start when we finish our construction.
Did you have a follow-up, or? Okay. Other questions, comments, or motions on this item? Alder Weiss?
Thank you, Mayor. Do we have an estimate for the incremental maintenance cost of just like versus other maintenance that's already ongoing that's similar to this for the city?
Does someone from Public Works want to take a crack? Because I don't know.
Is there like, so we're taking over the maintenance of the trail, so there's going to be incremental work that happens.
Oh, okay.
Like is there an estimate for like what that is of like incremental cost? Is it trivial? Is it gigantic? Is it bigger than a bread box?
That was too easy of an out.
Some of the extra costs are going to be, plowing. I guess that's going to be the big one. We're going to have, I don't know about any mowing, because I'm not sure what's going to transpire as we go forward. So it's tough to put a number on, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
Alder Lytle?
Thank you. I thought I recalled at an earlier discussion, in addition to the bridges, there was a question related to adequate right-of-way based on the trail width we were planning for. Has that been incorporated into the design aspect, or did we have to reach some kind of variance or something for the width? And then I have one more follow-up question.
Who knows the answer?
I can start it. I think Mr. Jursa will have to finish it. But basically, that $2.125 million figure that I said that Mr. Jursa came up with, that does include widening the trails to, is it 10 feet?
Correct.
In certain areas where it is not 10 feet. And so there's extra money for base aggregate and excavation and things like that to make it correct.
Yeah, there is sufficient right-of-way to build the project. There is not currently sufficient gravel on the trail to pave it 10 feet wide, so there would be some preliminary or some excavation trail improvements that would be needed prior to the paving to create a consistent 10-foot wide paved trail.
Great. And then just worth mentioning, the sooner if we move forward with this, the sooner we can begin to think about the communication strategy, because things will get worse a lot longer before they get better, especially if we're installing 3-box culverts and need to bring in additional gravel and that kind of thing. This is not a project that we could knock out in a few weeks just throwing some asphalt down on top of the current surface. So I know there'll be trail detours following the trail detours that are happening this summer. And so, in the end, we get a much more functional trail for the community to use. But hopefully we can put some planning into how to structure this and sequence it so the delays aren't too terrible and people have viable detours, because there's portions of that trail out on the west side of town that there's not obvious detours around. Thank you.
Other questions, comments, or motions on this item? Alder Braithwaite, then Alder Tucker Long.
This is an unfair question, but what's the expected life expectancy of a bridge that we would design and install? 50 years?
I think
75
50
years?
to 75 years is a typical life expectancy.
So I guess that's another concern, if to have this agreement continue to try to recoup the value of the money that we would be putting into the bridges. 13 years would go like that, especially Alder Lytle's point. It would take, I don't want to speculate, but there'd be a time period of construction, and I just want to make sure that we get the recreational value based on the dollars of the bridges that we would put in, and it doesn't become a donation to the DNR, even though it's still located within our boundaries of our city.
Alder Tucker Long.
So I just want to make sure I'm clear on what we're discussing tonight. So is it true that if, so this has come out of a lot of negotiations. And I'm wondering, during those negotiations, was the DNR open at all to helping pay for the bridges, since we're taking on their responsibility for these bridges? And if we don't approve this agreement tonight and agree to pay for the bridges and the paving, does that mean the paving cannot happen?
Mr. Kleinmeyer, about the paving?
Yeah, I haven't really been involved in direct contact with the DNR except for one meeting, but I don't necessarily believe that either of those alternatives have been discussed. And somebody, a lot of the people who had been working on this previously obviously have moved on, and so, if anyone else knows different, but I don't believe that those alternatives have been discussed. Which, theoretically opens the door for that discussion.
Okay. So who did work on this agreement that we're discussing tonight? Where did this come from?
This started back certainly with Adam Sayer and Theron Jacobson. Yeah, I don't think it goes as far back. It may go as far back as Jeff McCorsky. It does not go as far back as Bill Burns, I don't believe.
Yeah, it's been an extremely long discussion, which is why I'm terrified of going back for anything when we're so close to this, because this could be like a 5-year delay.
So, again, I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. So, if we go back to the DNR and say, hey, is there any sort of negotiation in the cost of these bridges, because it's adding well over $1 million to this project for us, that they would normally be responsible for, then you think it'll be could be a 5-year delay?
That's crystal ball stuff, but
Right.
The way I look at it is people have been talking about paving the trail since the 1990s. It's been 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so best case scenario is maybe a 5-year delay. Worst case scenario is never. And we basically lost our one chance in 30 years to do it. There's also some political considerations, which again are crystal ball stuff. But the stuff with the Snowmobile Club is that trail was built with club money, and they have a lot of say over what happens to it. And there's a bunch of political stuff, which I'm not totally clear on how the DNR operates, generally and also politically. And the Snowmobile Club, at least in the past, has been kind of okay with it. That is what the negotiated path for gas is, because that's been a big deal to them. But there's no guarantee that they have to keep being in favor of this. And if they kind of said, hey, actually, no, we want that to be a snowmobile trail, maybe then it doesn't happen at all.
Okay. And is there a possibility that we could pave the trail now, but not replace the bridges? And I understand that that could mean that the pavement gets trashed whenever the DNR does the bridges in the future. But is that a possibility right now?
Do you mean like legally? Because like if it's 100% up to us, we can do whatever we want, even if it's maybe not the best engineering decision. But like legally, can we do that? Mr.
Well, we'd
Kleinberg?
have to renegotiate the contract. I mean, I think right now this is anticipated that the city is going to do the bridges because all plans that we come up with are, I mean, and we would do the same thing. I mean, if we owned this land and somebody wanted to come onto our land and make improvements, we absolutely would say, yeah, that's fine, but all of your plans are subject to our approval. And so that's the language in this agreement. What I don't think has been discussed with the DNR is the concept that you've raised, which is effectively do the paving now, we'll wait DNR for you to do the bridges, and then we'll agree that if you essentially rip up the path when you have to do the bridges, we'll repave the path. Like that, I don't believe that that concept has been addressed.
Alder Humke.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm going to summarize what I'm hearing is that there's some people here on council that are concerned about the terms of the agreement, which makes sense. But it also sounds like if we don't do this, then, and we push it back for like potentially legitimate reasons, that it may never happen. And this is a situation where this path is really important to the infrastructure of our community and what we want it to look like in the immediate future and long term. And, you know, chairing the finance committee, like thinking about the financial implication of this, like, is it the ideal situation? Absolutely not. But we do have the reserve money. We do, I think, have some funds coming to us via rollover. Is it from the previous?
That is included in that figure, but just also remember that there are grants out there
Sure.
too for helping to offset the cost of this.
Right.
To
So,
include another one next meeting.
which I really appreciate. And so it's like, do we do what ideally we'd want to do? Sometimes we have to make decisions that aren't the ideal decision, but that maybe are the best decision for the situation we're in currently. So with that in mind, like my take on this is, we could talk about this in circles all night long, but I think people aren't generally in favor of this, and I would be in favor of it for all the reasons that the mayor listed. And I appreciate very much the concept of this is a short-term deal for like a really good investment for the DNR. I completely agree with that. But if it never happens, that's also really bad for us. So I'm really strongly in favor of just moving this forward and signing it.
I got Alder Lytle and then Alder Swanson.
Thank you. I think the topic has come up a couple of times now of potentially paving everything but the bridges. And I think Assistant City Administrator Frywald pointed out something that I'd defer to staff on, but it would be pretty challenging to bring in asphalt laying equipment and stop when we reach a bridge and not drive that equipment over those bridges. I'm sure we could temporarily bring in some kind of supports or something, but this project really isn't practical to only pave the non-bridge portions and come at the other portions from the side or from the other end. So I don't think it's probably worth looking at that option much beyond just our discussion tonight. And then I would add quickly before I yield that I'm in agreement with Alder Helmke. I'm not loving the changes that have been forced on us, but I do think this is the time, and this is a good investment of city resources.
Alder Swanson, and then hopefully someone will maybe make a motion.
Yeah, so that's sort of, first I have a point of inquiry. Do our rules allow me to say something and then make a motion after that statement?
We've definitely allowed it, and you can also make a motion and then make a statement afterwards.
Okay, thanks. Then so on that note, I think like what I'm hearing a lot is like, this is kind of I have some deep reservations about, reading over this and some things about it. And it sounds like many of the rest of us do as well. It's coming across as sort of a bitter pill, but I don't, it also sounds like this may be like as good as we're going to get. And I don't want to let perfect be the enemy of that. So with that in mind, I'm going to move to approve the land use agreement between the state of Wisconsin DNR and the city of Verona regarding Military Ridge State Trail.
Motion by Alder Swanson. Is there a second?
Second.
I think that was Alder Weiss. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the land use agreement between the State of Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources and the City of Verona regarding the Military Ridge State Trail signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion passes. With that, we'll move on to 12B, which is a discussion and possible action regarding the intergovernmental agreement between the City of Fitchburg, the City of Verona, and the Town of Verona regarding the Fitch-Verona Emergency Medical Services District Intergovernmental Agreement. I think we can handle this one in open session since all the negotiating points are open and all the municipalities can see them. Mr. Kleinmeyer.
Did you want me to
Yeah, I was
introduce
going to
it?
say, I think it's
All right,
probably
Mr.
Jamie.
Alec.
Yeah, I'll introduce it. Sure, no problem, Mayor. The town chair and the town of Verona, mayors of the cities of Fitchburg and Verona, and administrators of all three municipalities have met to discuss potential amendments to the current agreement. Proposed amendments include changes to the membership of the EMS Commission to reflect the proportion of contribution of participating municipalities, a revised funding structure to account for the proportions of equalized value, cost, volume, and population, creating a calculation to determine shares of equity to account for the proportion of a municipality's prior contributions to the district, clarifying withdrawal and termination procedures, and clarifying and cleaning up various sections. The council may opt to go into closed session to discuss terms and conditions of the agreement.
Thank you. I guess if I could summarize, since I guess I was at all the meetings too. From my perspective, the biggest changes are, one, the City of Verona residents will pay less money, will pay more in line with the services we're using. Two, in exchange for that, Fitchburg is going to get more say on the EMS Council, which is, it could be a mixed blessing. Although as a former EMS Commission member, I've never seen people vote based on their municipality. People have disagreed on stuff, but it's been generally what the members think is the best way to handle it. And then the third biggest change, which I think would counterbalance the Fitchburg thing, is that it's easier to withdraw. I'm not saying the city should or withdraw, but the language changes it to make it so it's actually possible to leave. Whereas when I felt under the previous agreement, I don't know how you'd get an ambulance to operate it, because under the previous agreement, you'd get money, but an ambulance could take years to get. So unless you can, I don't know, buy an ambulance before you leave the district somehow and be paying for the ambulance and paying to the district, which no community has enough extra money, there's no real practical way to withdraw. The changes now will basically make it easier to withdraw. We do have some ongoing things. The part of the Fitchburg delegation wanted to talk more about some of the stuff, so we're doing it, but I mean, we think we're real close. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Klemmer?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, there's three kind of outstanding issues right now that are still being discussed, all of which I think will get worked out, but that's why I think the agreement's probably going to have to come back to you. I mean, the main one is a discussion that came up for the first time, admittedly by Fitchburg. They acknowledged that during the meeting on Friday, regarding, when you get into, withdrawal and termination and allocation of assets, just at a very high level, they were talking about a fund balance, and depending on how it plays out, either $2 million would be split among the three parties based on an allocation, or 1.5. And again, we were using, kind of round numbers, but that's a pretty significant figure that I think needs to get worked out so that a recommendation can come to you. And I think that that's something where it sounded like, based on that meeting, that Fitchburg had some discussions with their finance director, but that obviously the City of Verona and the Town of Verona wanted to have discussions with their finance director or consultants about this to figure out exactly how does this play out, and how does it work.
Okay, so knowing all that information, thoughts on the agreement? Positive, negative, neutral, questions? Alder Swanson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I like anything that makes Verona residents pay less money. And it sounds like we don't have reason to be concerned about a less reasonable EMS commission as a result of that. So this seemed like everything that you've presented seems like a net positive for the most recent changes.
Other thoughts? Alder Humke, then Alder Tucker Long.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I would be really curious about the financial piece of it, though. I think that's my only like flag, just as like making sure that we're not adjusting the agreement in a way that like they get more money because of how we just changed it versus like how we've already paid into the system or how we've like collectively pooled that money already. So that would be my only flag. But other than that, I completely agree. I think this is a win-win all around for the city.
And I guess if I could add or clarify that in the agreement, there is a section regarding the equalized value calculation, and it is based on what we previously paid, starting 10 years and then 9 years, because since the average life of an ambulance is 10 years, so we figured that was the fairest way. Alder Tucker Long.
I agree. I think this is great. I'm in favor of it. And I'm wondering if we are looking for a motion at this point or just feedback?
Mr. Clammer, do you think, because we don't know how it's going to
Because
Yeah, I
if
would.
it's coming back?
There are certain times when you all will conditionally approve something, but I believe that this financial issue is large enough that, and the other benefit is I think when it comes back to you, you're also then going to have the ability to have the full agreement in the packet too, which is, I know that that's something that you're always, hopeful for. Well, I mean, it doesn't always work out that way, but it's, whenever you can do that, you'd like to be able to do that.
Other feedback on the agreement, or proposed agreement, I should say. Alder Harrison.
Can I just give a professional ditto? I'm also in favor for the reasons already specified.
Any other thoughts? Okay. With that, we will move on to 12C, which is regarding, it's a discussion on possible action regarding the appraisals for the city-owned property at 2159 Range Trail and the privately owned property located at 1100 Wayland Road. And this will be the open session part of it before we go on to the next one. Mr. Olick.
Sure. And speaking of late arrivals for the packet, I received the appraisal for the property on Wayland Road at about 5 o'clock today, a little after. But anyway, for the parcel that Greg looked at, it was for 71 acres total, but he did a kind of a per acre valuation. And the per acre valuation came in at $150,000. Or if it's the whole parcel, which I don't think we would do, $10,658,000 total.
I have a quick question on that. So I don't necessarily know what Public Works or the city would do with that, but I mean, would there be an option? Obviously, we'd have to pay more since our property isn't worth as much, but if we acquired all that extra property, would it be sellable at some point? Or worth land banking? I know that's kind of a...
Yeah, I mean, as long as there's no restrictions placed on our acquisition, then, yeah, I mean, the municipalities have definitely purchased land knowing that they're purchasing more than what they need for their uses, but kind of with what you were talking about, Mayor, in mind of, okay, once we specifically identify how we want to use it and how we want to keep some land for growth, then the idea of carving off land and selling it consistent with whatever, uses are you want for it.
Thank you. Thoughts, I guess, on the appraisal numbers from the council or
If I may, I would just say that and this is not a criticism of Mr. Hicks, obviously the timing is suggested that we got it today. There is a substantial difference in price per acre between the two parcels that I don't think staff has really had a chance to evaluate to provide guidance. I mean, I can tell you right now that I'm fairly confident that the city's going to get significant pushback from any purchaser on the value for the property that we own in light of what we paid for it just, 6 or 7 years ago.
Okay. So I guess then a question to staff then, are we ready to talk about it? I know it's on the agenda, but if we're not sure what we have and what they have and what it's all worth, can we even talk about it in a meaningful way?
I think there's also an intermediary party involved in all of this too that I'd like to consult with prior to actually coming back with like a plan.
Okay, okay. I guess knowing that any feedback from the council, and we can, and definitely if people feel like they are ready to move forward and talk about it, we definitely can. I don't feel comfortable, but I'm only one person. Alder Harrison.
Yeah, I don't have like anything final to say about this, but it sounds like a high number. That's a lot of money. And I think it compares to about 6 million, if I'm remembering correctly, of the Range Trail property. I don't recall exactly what that
thought it was
comparison
8.1.
price was. 8.1, thank you. Yeah, I guess that's not as big of a difference as I thought, but it's still a big difference.
Well, I think the big, sorry, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Okay.
I'm
I
done.
think, I apologize for interrupting. I think the big difference is the price per acre. I mean, when I was looking at the numbers, I think one was 150,000, which I think we've definitely seen that and maybe higher in the city of Verona. I haven't seen $400,000 an acre. And I'm not, this is not meant as a criticism. I'm sure that Mr. Hicks went through and did his comparable analysis, but the difficulty the issue that the city needs to work through is simply because we have an appraisal and that amount doesn't mean that somebody's going to be willing to pay it.
Right.
And so I think that in part is going to be, how do you navigate making sure that you're getting sufficient value if you decide that you want to do a swap, but knowing that you're probably not likely going to get that value that's identified in the appraisal.
Alder Tucker Long.
I have two things to say quick. The first is that I agree, I don't feel we have enough information to talk about this tonight. Do we need a motion to delay it? No, okay. And then the second thing is, to Attorney Kleinmeier's point, I will say that if you take a quick look at lots that are for sale around town, less than quarter acres are selling between 180 and 230, which would put them way more than $400,000 an acre. So I don't know that it's terribly out of the realistic side of things, but yeah, we can talk about that more later, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, I would like a little more breakdown just because I feel like at least our property is more development ready, is my understanding. It's also in a area where you can do multifamily residential, which seemingly everyone wants to do, whereas in the commercial stuff seems to move a little bit slower. So I don't necessarily question the value that much, but yeah, I would like staff to have some time on it to get a little more feedback because, I mean, the money's the whole thing. Like we don't have a spare $2 million laying around, or if we do, someone should tell me, but I don't think we do.
Hey, don't get me wrong, I would love if the city could sell that property for $8.1 million.
Okay, so unless anyone has anything else to say on C, we'll move on to D, which I expect maybe we won't have a lot to say on that one either. Anything else on C? Okay, moving on to D, which is a discussion of possible action regarding the possible sale of the city-owned property at 2159 Range Trail and the possible acquisition of property for the site of the new Department of Public Works facility. Anything to add, Mr. Aulick, on this one?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Any thoughts on this one? Seeing shaking heads, I will say that we'll, for real this time, at the next meeting, we will talk about it. With that, I will move on to item 13, which is adjournment.
So moved.
Motion by Alder Hoax.
Second.
Seconded by Alder Homke. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And we're adjourned at 9 p.m. exactly. Thank you, everyone.